The operating room is a dedicated area for surgical procedures and must be conducive to performing surgery to the highest standards of safety for patients and staff. The principal purpose of such a dedicated area is to reduce the risk of infection of patients. The operating room must be large enough for complex procedures to be undertaken, for storage of appropriate equipment, movement of staff, as well as the maintenance of a sterile area around the operative field by changing the operating room air 20 to 25 times each hour at positive pressure relative to outside the room. Low concentrations of airborne bacteria and particulate matter can be maintained. The number of people in the room and their movement should be minimized. Ambience within the operating theater should be calm and professional, and procedures should be performed in a manner that is respectful to the patient and to all the staff involved. The air temperature should be such that inadvertent patient hypothermia does not occur. The operative field must be well illuminated. Surgeons sometimes wear a headlight for procedures in body cavities that cannot be illuminated easily by standard operating room lights. The surgeon's assistant has the important role of assisting and supporting the surgeon in the smooth conduct of operations. It is important to concentrate on the task at hand, to carry out the surgeon's instructions with speed and accuracy, to have a sense of anticipation, and to notify the surgeon of any potential problem during the operation. A face mask, which covers the nose and mouth, prevents droplet spread of secretions and bacteria, is worn for any invasive procedure, and is changed after each case. Eye protection in the form of plain plastic glasses or a visor attached to the face mask must be worn to protect against droplet spray of infected body fluids. Gloves are worn if there is a possibility of coming into contact with patient's body fluids. Clean theater attire, dedicated theater shoes and a disposable hair cover are worn while in the operating suite. Joseph Lister, in 1865, first demonstrated the reduction in surgical site infections with disinfection techniques. Aseptic techniques are clinical practices that aim to prevent infection occurring in the patient as a result of the surgical procedure by preparation and cleaning the patient's skin with antiseptic fluid before it is incised or punctured. Use of sterilized instruments, equipment or surgical materials which might come into contact with the operative field and surgical wound. Personnel involved directly in the operative procedure, surgeon, surgical assistant, and scrub nurse, wash their hands and forearms with antiseptic soap for 5 minutes before the first operation of the day and for 3 minutes before each subsequent case to reduce skin flora. More recently, alcohol-based hand rubs have been developed that require application for 1 minute. Hands are dried with sterile towels, and a moisture-impermeable sterile gown is worn. 1 or 2 pairs of sterile gloves prevent transfer of bacteria from the surgeon's hands to the patient and also protect the surgeon from infected blood and body fluids from the patient. After induction of anesthesia, hair is removed from the operative site by shaving with a razor. Patient and also protect the surgeon from infected blood and body fluids from the patient. After induction of anesthesia, hair is removed from the operative site by shaving with a razor. Electric clippers. The skin is cleansed with an antiseptic solution starting at the site where the incision will be made and working away from the area, so that approximately 10 to 20 centimeters of skin around the incision site is prepared. The patient is covered with sterile linen or impermeable drapes, leaving exposed only the cleansed area around the incision site, which may be covered by a sterile adhesive plastic drape. Surgical antiseptics. The commonest source of bacterial contamination in the operating room is from the patient. Therefore, topical antiseptic agents are used to reduce the number of skin organisms prior to any skin incision or puncture, and include the following: aqueous chlorhexidine, 0.5%, is used to disinfect mucous membranes and parts of the body adjacent to structures which would be adversely affected by more stringent antiseptics, e.g. the skin around the eyes. Aqueous chlorhexidine is bactericidal and has low tissue toxicity. Cetrimide, 2%, is bactericidal. Iodine-based antiseptics, such as povidone iodine 10% betadine, and alcoholic iodine solution, destroy a wide range of bacteria, especially Staphylococcus, by iodization of microbial proteins. Alcohol-based 70% antiseptics kill bacteria by evaporation. Chlorhexidine 2% can also be used in communothion, with 70% alcohol. Anything that comes into contact with the surgical wound must be sterile. The method of sterilization depends on the item being sterilized. The risk of transmission of infectious agents from patients to staff, and vice versa, is reduced by practicing universal precautions. Thus, it is assumed that all patients harbor potentially dangerous pathogens, e.g. hepatitis C, HIV, no matter how innocuous they appear, because carrier status cannot definitely be excluded without repeated, expensive and time-consuming investigations. The principle of universal precautions is to establish a physical barrier between the patient and the carer to prevent direct contact with any potentially infected body fluid or tissue in either direction. Hazards, other than those intrinsic to the anesthetic and surgical operation, are organizational or related to operating room equipment, or the transfer and positioning of the patient on the operating table. Organizational hazards should be entirely preventable. A full history and examination of the patient must be made before surgery, including the past medical history, drug history and allergies, so that elementary errors are not made, e.g. unwittingly operating on a patient with a pacemaker, or who is anticoagulated, or prescribing a drug to which the patient is allergic before surgery commences. The reason for and nature of the operation, together with its potential common and serious complications, and the reasonable expectations from the procedure, are discussed with the patient and family, who are free to ask any questions. A consent or request for treatment form, which states the nature of the operation and the side on which the operation is to be performed. If the operation is a unilateral procedure, is signed by the patient and the surgeon or deputy. Once in the operating suite, a check is made to confirm that all the necessary safeguards have been. In addition to infection, there are many potential sources of hazard in the operating environment. Hazards, other than those intrinsic to the anesthetic and surgical operation, are organizational or related to operating room equipment, or the transfer and positioning of the patient on the operating table. Organizational hazards should be entirely preventable. A full history and examination of the patient must be made before surgery, including the past medical history, drug history, and allergies, so that elementary errors are not made. Operating on a patient with a pacemaker, or who is anticoagulated, or prescribing a drug to which the patient is allergic before surgery commences. The reason for and nature of the operation, together with its potential common and serious complications, and the reasonable expectations from the procedure, are discussed with the patient and family, who are free to ask any questions. A consent or request for treatment form, which states the nature of the operation and the side on which the operation is to be performed. If the operation is a unilateral procedure, is signed by the patient and the surgeon or deputy. Once in the operating suite, a check is made to confirm that all the necessary safeguards have been. Small point of contact, active electrode, through the patient to a large contact site, indifferent electrode or diathermy plate, to produce localized heat, which coagulates. Protein diathermy produces coagulation. Hemostasis with a small amount of adjacent tissue damage. Cutting, tissue cutting with minimal tissue damage. Or 3. Fulguration, hemostasis with considerable tissue necrosis. Potential dangers include electrocution, inadvertent burn to the patient at a remote site and to the surgeon, fire associated with pooled alcohol-based antiseptics, explosion of flammable anesthetic gases, and interference with the function of cardiac pacemakers. A variety of lasers with different wavelengths and effects on cells and tissues are used in surgical practice for highly accurate tissue destruction, e.g. mucosal surgery, CNS tumors, dermatological lesions, aerodigestive tumors, coagulating blood vessels, e.g. gastrointestinal tract, retinal photocoagulation, and for photoactivation of intratumor hematoporphyrin for malignant tumor destruction, photodynamic therapy. Hazards include eye damage, explosion of anesthetic gases, and shattering and destruction of other equipment. Limb tourniquets are used to provide a bloodless field in which to operate. The limb is LVAT and exsanguinated by a rubber bandage or compressive sleeve, and the proximal tourniquet inflated to 50 mm of mercury upper limb or 100 mm of mercury a lower limb. Above systolic blood pressure, a tourniquet should not be kept inflated for more than 60 to 90 minutes. A record should be kept during the operation of how long the tourniquet has been inflated. Tourniquet complications include arterial thrombosis, distal ischemia, nerve compression and skin traction. The patient is positioned on the operating table in such a way that the procedure is facilitated and the airway can be protected. Pressure points are padded, and limbs are positioned so that peripheral nerves, major blood vessels, joints and ligaments are not stretched or compressed. The anesthetized patient must be in a stable position on the operating table and may need to be strapped in position with broad adhesive tape. There must be no contact between the skin and any metallic surface because of the risk of diathermy burn and pressure necrosis. Sections of the operating table can be angled so that the patient is optimally positioned for the particular procedure, flexed while lying supine or on one side, head down. Head-up endoscopy is performed by inserting a fiber optic telescope containing a light source and instrument channels into the gastrointestinal, respiratory, and urinary tracts. The operator undertakes the procedure by manipulating the endoscope while viewing a video screen, but occasionally the eyepiece of the instrument may be used. Endoscopy of the gastrointestinal tract allows the endoscopist to view the lumen of the esophagus, stomach and proximal half of the duodenum. Esophagogastroduodenoscopy or upper gastrointestinal endoscopy or gastroscopy. Colonoscopy. Rectum and distal sigmoid colon, sigmoidoscopy, and distal rectum and anal canal proctoscopy. It is usually performed under sedation. Intestinal endoscopy can also be performed at laparotomy, enteroscopy, by making a small incision in the intestine and passing the endoscope along the intestinal lumen. Procedures such as dilatation of strictures, biospy and diathermy, ablation of polyps, injection of adrenaline around bleeding gastric and duodenal ulcers, cholangiopancreatography, removal of common bile duct calculi, biliary dilatation or stenting, injection of hemorrhoids, and tumor phototherapy can be performed using fiber optic endoscopes. The upper airway, trachea and proximal bronchi can be inspected by bronchoscopy, which may be performed under local or general anesthesia. Bronchoscopy is used for diagnosis, inspection, and biopsy of lung tumors, or therapy. Removal of foreign bodies, aspiration of secretions. Anesthetists occasionally use the fiber optic bronchoscope to facilitate difficult endotracheal intubation. The urethra, urethroskopy, bladder, cystoscopy, and ureters, ureteroscopy, can be inspected for diagnostic purposes. Extensive therapeutic procedures, resection of the prostate, diathermy and excision of bladder tumors, extraction of calculi, can be performed safely with far less morbidity than the equivalent open procedures. There are two forms of endoscopic surgery that both involve the insertion of a microchip video camera with a light source into the lumen or through the wall of the aerodigestive tract into a body cavity. The latter is performed through an incision in the wall of the gastrointestinal tract with placement of specially crafted surgical instruments into a body cavity. For both techniques, the surgeon undertakes the procedure by manipulating the instruments while viewing a video screen. Some forms of endoscopic surgery utilize endoscopic ultrasound for guidance of incisions or placement of internal drains. Examples of endoscopic surgical procedures include resections of larger gastrointestinal tumors, endoscopic mucosal resection, drainage of infected pancreatic collections into the stomach, endoscopic cyst gastrostomy, esophageal myotomy, for oral endoscopic myotomy, or POEM, endoscopic sinus surgery, and natural orifice transluminal endoscopic surgery. Notes: the advantages of endoscopic or closed surgery are reduced postoperative pain and analgesic requirements, earlier discharge from hospital, and earlier return to normal function. However, many surgical procedures either cannot be undertaken endoscopically because of their very nature, or cannot be completed endoscopically because of difficulty or patient safety, in which case the operation is converted to an open procedure. Some procedures use endoscopic techniques to assist with the procedure, and an incision is made to either complete the operation or deliver the resected specimen. The range of endoscopically performed operations in many surgical specialties has increased enormously over the last 20 years. Open surgery is the traditional or conventional method of operating. In general terms, open surgery involves making a surgical wound, dissecting tissues to gain access to and mobilize the structure or organ of interest, completing the therapeutic procedure, ensuring hemostasis is complete, and then closing the wound with sutures. Open surgery is performed more with the hands and direct touch than endoscopic procedures, and fingers may be used for blunt dissection. The surgical wound accounts for much of the morbidity of open surgery, particularly the cutting of muscle. The range of open operations is extremely wide, as evidenced by the procedures described throughout this book. Minimally invasive surgery avoids the larger incisions of open surgery to minimize morbidity. Different types of microchip video cameras can be used to visualize the required cavity or space within the body. The cameras vary in size and their complement of different angled lenses, which are either fixed or maneuverable. Magnification of the image often provides a superior view to that obtained at open surgery. Laparoscopy refers to the technique of insufflating the peritoneal cavity with gas, inserting a cam era through most commonly a 10 to 15 mm subumbilical incision, and inspecting the abdominal contents. Usually additional ports are inserted through 5 to 10 mm incisions in the abdominal wall, and instruments, scissors, grasping devices, retractors, staplers, needle holders, energy devices are introduced and manipulated by the surgeon to perform the operation. Procedures such as cholecystectomy, gastric fundoplication, hiatus hernia repair, division of adhesions, appendicectomy, splenectomy, adrenalectomy, nephrectomy, buphorectomy, tubal ligation, bariatric surgery, and hernia repair can be undertaken laparoscopically with less morbidity than if undertaken as an open or conventional operation. Endoscopic surgery has allowed some procedures to be undertaken as day cases, whereas the same procedure performed as an open operation would require an inpatient stay of several days. Cholecystectomy, hernia repair, large joints, knee, hip, ankle, shoulder, wrist, can be inspected by arthroscopy. Therapeutic procedures include removal of bone chips, cartilage excision and removal, and ligament repair. Arthroscopic surgery has been enormously beneficial for orthopedic patients and has allowed far more rapid return to function. Robotic surgery is a form of minimally invasive surgery where the surgeon